Ambassador Jessica Reeves stepped into the Galactic Council's main chamber and immediately started laughing. Not the polite diplomatic chuckle she'd been trained to deploy, but the deep, belly-shaking laugh of someone who'd just witnessed peak absurdity. The three alien representatives arranged themselves in what they clearly thought was an intimidating formation. Chancellor Vortak, a 7-foot-tall purple lizard wearing enough ceremonial chains to anchor a yacht, sat elevated on a throne that probably cost more than most planets' GDP. To his left, Secretary Bleep Blorp. Yes, that was actually his name, frantically shuffled through digital tablets with his 12 tentacles, looking like an anxious octopus at tax time. General Krex stood at attention, his forearms crossed in what was presumably meant to be menacing, though the effect was somewhat diminished by his species' unfortunate resemblance to an angry houseplant. "Oh, this is rich," Jessica said, wiping tears from her eyes. "Let me guess. The dramatic lighting, the unnecessarily high ceiling, the whole we're so much better than you setup. You guys watched human movies before this meeting, didn't you?" Chancellor Vortak's neck frills flared, apparently the alien equivalent of clearing your throat importantly. "Human representative, you stand before the Galactic Council to answer for your species' aggressive expansion and blatant disregard for established protocols." Jessica pulled out a small notepad and started scribbling. Aggressive expansion. Blatant disregard. Got it. Anything else for my bingo card? Maybe something about knowing our place or consequences for our actions. The Chancellor's eye twitched. "This is not a game, human. Your species has been granted the privilege of requesting basic trading rights, nothing more." Privilege. Jessica looked around the chamber like she was seeing it for the first time. "You know what? I need to call my boss." "Hey, Director Martinez?" "Yeah, it's Jessica. Remember how you said these negotiations would be straightforward? Well, turns out they think trade agreements are something we have to beg for." "I know, right? Like we're some kind of charity case." She wasn't actually on a call, but the way Secretary Bleep Blorp started hyperventilating with his gill slits suggested her performance was effective. "The human will cease this mockery immediately," General Krex boomed, his voice carrying the authority of someone who'd clearly never been told no before. Jessica looked up from her fake phone call. "Sorry, what?" "Oh, the mockery thing. See? Here's where you made your first mistake. You assumed I'd be intimidated by your little theater production here. But I spent 15 years talking down armed psychopaths who thought they were scary. You three? You're like a bad community theater version of threatening." Chancellor Vortak's frills were now flaring so rapidly they looked like they might achieve liftoff. "Your species will learn respect, or face the consequences. There it is." Jessica made a big show of marking her notepad. The consequences. "That's a bingo. Though I have to ask, did you guys practice this routine? Because the timing is just chef's kiss perfect, very menacing." "I'm practically trembling." She wasn't trembling. She was, in fact, examining the chamber's architecture with the casual interest of someone planning a renovation. "You mock us at your own peril, human," Chancellor Vortak hissed. "Actually, I'm mocking you for free," Jessica replied cheerfully. "Though if you want to pay me for it, I do accept most major currencies." "Do you guys still use those shiny rocks, or have you upgraded to actual money yet?" "You know what your problem is?" Jessica continued, settling into her chair like she owned the place. "You fundamentally misunderstand human psychology. Let me give you a quick crash course." She stood up and began pacing, which seemed to make all three aliens nervous. "Good. Yeah. First, let's talk about how humans respond to threats. In 1773, the British thought they could intimidate American colonists with some taxes on tea. Know what happened? The colonists dressed up like Native Americans and threw an entire harbor's worth of tea into the ocean. Not because they couldn't afford the tax, mind you, but because someone told them they had to pay it. Secretary Bleep Blorp's tentacles were now moving in what appeared to be a stress pattern. "Surely you exaggerate, Ambassador." "Oh, I'm just getting started. There's a whole category of human behavior we call Florida Man. Last month, a guy named Dave wrestled an alligator because it stole his sandwich. Not a fancy sandwich, mind you. Gas station ham and cheese. Dave risked his life for what amounts to $2 worth of processed meat and bread. General Krex's forearms uncrossed slightly. This seems illogical. That's exactly my point. Humans are spectacularly bad at cost-benefit analysis when someone tries to push us around. We once had a war that lasted over a century because two royal families couldn't agree on flower arrangements. We've destroyed entire civilizations over spice trades. We invented nuclear weapons and then spent decades pointing them at each other just to see who would blink first. Chancellor Vortak was beginning to look less confident. Surely your species has evolved beyond such primitive behaviors. Jessica barked out another laugh. Oh, Chancellor, you sweet summer child. Last week, humans on Earth spent 3 days arguing about whether a dress was blue or gold. 3 days. The global economy lost productivity because people couldn't agree on colors. We shut down social media platforms over it. But that's... Secretary Bleep Blorb started. Completely insane? Absolutely. But here's the thing you need to understand about humans. We don't do rational when we're annoyed. We do spite. We do revenge. We do disproportionate responses that make mathematicians weep. You want to know what happens when you threaten a human? We don't comply. We don't negotiate. We find increasingly creative ways to make your life miserable while whistling show tunes. She paused for effect, noting that General Krex had started fidgeting with his weapon holsters. Take the Great Emu War of 1932. Humans declared war on birds. Actual flightless birds with machine guns. And lost. Rather than admit defeat, we turned it into a running joke that we still reference 90 years later. That's the species you're trying to intimidate. Chancellor Vortak's voice had lost some of its earlier authority. Surely you cannot expect us to believe that humans would escalate over minor trade disputes. Minor trade disputes? Oh, Chancellor, you beautiful, naive creature. We once had a war over a bucket. An actual bucket. The War of the Oaken Bucket, 1325. It started because someone stole a wooden bucket from a well. And before you know it, we had armies marching across Italy. The bucket is still in a museum, by the way. We're very proud of our bucket war. The three aliens exchanged glances that didn't require translation. Even across species barriers, the look of what have we gotten ourselves into was apparently universal. So when you sit there with your dramatic lighting and your intimidating postures, threatening humanity with consequences, you're not just poking a bear. You're poking a bear that once spent 30 years fighting itself over whether the toilet paper should hang over or under the roll. But let's talk about these trade sanctions you're threatening, Jessica said, pulling out a tablet that looked suspiciously more advanced than anything the aliens were using. Because I think there might be some misunderstandings about the economic situation here. Chancellor Vortak straightened his chains. Said, humanity requires our trade networks to survive. You are economically insignificant. Without our guidance, economically insignificant. Jessica nodded thoughtfully. That's interesting. Secretary Bleep Blorb, what's your species' favorite recreational activity? The tentacled alien looked confused. We enjoy the immersive experience chambers that simulate exotic environments. Ah, yes, the Earth Safari experience. Very popular, I hear. 37 different packages, including authentic human wilderness adventure and primitive human tribal ceremony. Tell me, how much does your species spend on those annually? Bleep Blorb's tentacles started that stress pattern again. The economic figures are not relevant to these proceedings. Oh, but they are. Especially since humans have been running those operations for the past 5 years. Surprised? Yeah, we figured out that aliens would pay premium prices for authentic Earth experiences without actually checking if they were authentic. She swiped through her tablet. Let's see, we've sold 12,000 genuine human artifacts to the Zephyrian Empire. Mostly IKEA furniture and Happy Meal toys, but they don't know that. The Corvan Republic has spent 40 million credits on ancient human wisdom scrolls that are literally just fortune cookies messages printed on fancy paper. General Krex's houseplant-like features were shifting colors. This is fraudulent. Fraudulent? Oh, General, you wound me. We never claimed the fortune cookies were ancient. We said they contained timeless human wisdom. You can't argue with a journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step, can you? That's legitimate wisdom right there. Chancellor Vortak was now leaning forward, his confident posture cracking. These are minor consumer goods. Hardly significant to galactic trade. Minor? Oh, Chancellor, you beautiful, economically illiterate lizard. We've been tracking your species' consumption patterns. Do you know what the #1 imported item to your home planet is? Earth coffee. Not the beans, mind you. The actual brewed coffee. We're shipping liquid coffee across 17 star systems because your people are addicted to caffeine. She pulled up a chart that made Secretary Bleep Blorb's tentacles go completely still. Your entire productivity index is tied to human coffee imports. Last month, when we had a shipping delay due to a solar storm, your stock market crashed. Over coffee. That's not possible. Vortak stammered. Oh, it gets better. General Krex, your military relies on human-manufactured stimulants for your soldiers, right? What do you call them? Battle enhancers. Krex's forearms were now crossed defensively. Our military procurement is classified energy drinks. You're feeding your elite warriors Red Bull and calling it battle enhancers. Do you know what Red Bull costs to manufacture? 12 cents per can. Do you know what you're paying for it? 47 credits per can. We're making a 4,000% markup on sugar water and caffeine. The silence in the chamber was deafening. But here's my favorite part, Jessica continued, clearly enjoying herself. The Galactic Council's own cafeteria, staffed entirely by a human catering company, Dave's Cosmic Deli. Nice guy Dave, used to run a food truck in Portland. Now he's got a 17-system contract feeding government officials across the galaxy. She leaned back in her chair. So when you talk about trade sanctions, you might want to consider that you're essentially threatening to sanction your own coffee supply, your military's energy drinks, and your entertainment industry. It's like threatening to hold your breath until we apologize. Adorable, but not particularly effective. Chancellor Vortak's chains were rattling now. These are temporary arrangements. We can find alternative suppliers. Sure you can. The Zenithian Collective tried that last year. Know what happened? 3 weeks into their independence from human goods experiment, their entire population was going through caffeine withdrawal. And productivity dropped 80%. They ended up paying triple rates for emergency coffee shipments. Jessica stood up and walked toward the window, hands clasped behind her back like a professor delivering a lecture. See, gentlemen, this is what happens when you assume a species is primitive without doing your homework. While you were busy being intimidating, we were busy being indispensable. It's economics 101, really. Supply and demand. You demand what we supply, and we supply it at prices that make us very, very comfortable. General Krex finally stepped forward, his forearms spreading wide in what was clearly meant to be an intimidating display. Economic leverage is irrelevant if we simply take what we want. The Galactic Defense Force vastly outguns your primitive military. Jessica turned from the window with a smile that would have made a shark nervous. Oh, General, you want to talk military? That's adorable. Really? It's like watching a toddler threaten to fight Mike Tyson. She pulled up another screen on her tablet. Let me show you something interesting. 3 months ago, you had a pirate problem in the Kepler sector, right? 47 ships, heavily armed, terrorizing your trade routes for 6 months. What happened to them? Krex's color shifted slightly. They were eliminated during a routine patrol. Routine patrol? That's what you reported anyway. But here's the thing about humans, General. We're really bad at following orders, especially when those orders don't help. She swiped to a video file. This is security footage from the cargo ship Wallaby Express. Captain Murphy, former Australian Navy. Notice how he's hauling agricultural supplies when he encounters your pirate fleet. The video showed a single human cargo ship surrounded by dozens of pirate vessels. Now, standard procedure would be to surrender, right? To call for help, negotiate, maybe try to run. But Captain Murphy, he did something different. He ran the lead pirate ship at full speed while broadcasting Waltzing Matilda over every available frequency. General Krex was now paying very close attention. The collision disabled his ship and the pirate flagship. So what does Murphy do? He spacewalks to the pirate ship and starts manually disabling their weapons systems. In the spacesuit. In the middle of a firefight, the pirates were so confused by this obviously suicidal maneuver that they didn't know how to respond. She fast-forwarded the video. By the time your routine patrol arrived, Captain Murphy had somehow convinced the pirates that humans were a species of berserker warriors who viewed death in battle as a religious experience. They surrendered immediately. "One ship," Krex said weakly. "One ship cannot defeat a fleet, you're right. But that's not the best part. The best part is what happened next. The surviving pirates spread word that humans were insane. Not just brave, not just tough. Insane, vaguely. Dangerously insane. Word spread through the criminal networks that humans would rather die than back down from a fight. Jessica pulled up a galactic map. Notice how pirate activity around human shipping lanes has dropped to zero. Not because we're strong, General, but because we're unpredictable. Pirates can handle superior firepower. They can't handle opponents who might decide to hug a fusion reactor just to prove a point. This is an isolated incident, Krex protested. Isolated? Oh, General, you haven't been paying attention. Last week, a human mining crew in the Centauri system detected what they thought was a hostile alien probe. Standard protocol was to report it and wait for military response. Instead, they loaded it into their cargo bay and took it apart to see how it worked. She pulled up another report. Turns out it was an advanced reconnaissance drone from the hegemony. Took their engineers 8 months to build, cost roughly 12 million credits, and was packed with technology 30 years ahead of anything humans had seen before. They destroyed it? Oh, they took it apart all right. But here's the kicker. They live-streamed the whole thing. Alien Tech Tuesday, they called it. Got 40 million views across 17 systems. The hegemony's super-secret spy technology became a tutorial video watched by half the galaxy. General Krex was now visibly sweating, which was impressive for a plant-based life form. But the real military problem isn't our technology, General. It's our attitude. Your species wage war with objectives, territory, resources, strategic advantage. Humans wage war with enthusiasm. We turn everything into a game, and we're really, really good at games we make up as we go along. She showed him one final video. This is Sergeant Rodriguez dealing with a hostile boarding party last month. Notice his technique. The video showed a human soldier facing down 3 armed aliens in a ship's corridor. Instead of taking cover or calling for backup, he started dancing. Not just any dancing, the kind of aggressively enthusiastic dancing that suggested either complete confidence or complete insanity. The aliens stopped, clearly confused by this unprecedented tactical maneuver. While they were trying to figure out what was happening, Rodriguez had somehow disarmed all 3 of them and was teaching them the Macarena. Military doctrine, Jessica said, is really just institutionalized common sense. But humans don't do common sense under pressure. We do whatever occurs to us at the moment, and half the time, we're as surprised as everyone else when it works. The chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. Chancellor Vortak, who had started this meeting radiating confidence, now looked like he was reconsidering his career choices. Secretary Bleep Blorp's tentacles had arranged themselves into what could only be described as a stress pretzel. General Krex appeared to be having an existential crisis about the nature of military strategy. Jessica set down her tablet and smiled. So, gentlemen, shall we discuss the terms of our trade agreement? Terms? Chancellor Vortak croaked, his voice having lost all its earlier authority. Oh yes. See, when you invited me here to discuss humanity's request for basic trading rights, you made a fundamental error. You assumed we were requesting something we needed. But as we've established, you need us considerably more than we need you. She walked around the table, and all 3 aliens tracked her movement like prey animals watching a predator. Here's what I'm prepared to offer. In exchange for full membership in the Galactic Trade Consortium, complete access to all shipping lanes, and preferential rates on all interstellar commerce, humanity will continue to provide the goods and services that keep your economies functioning. That's not a negotiation. Bleep Blorp stammered. That's a list of demands. Demands? Oh, Secretary, you misunderstand. These aren't demands. They're the opening offer. We haven't gotten to the cultural exchange program yet. She pulled out a new document. As part of our expanded relationship, Earth proposes a comprehensive cultural exchange initiative. We'll establish human cultural centers on 12 major worlds, complete with coffee shops, entertainment venues, and educational facilities. General Krex looked suspicious. What sort of education? Oh, basic human subjects, mathematics, science, philosophy, and advanced conflict resolution. We find that most species benefit from learning how humans approach problem solving. The aliens exchanged glances that suggested they were beginning to understand exactly what kind of problem solving humans specialized in. We also propose expanded tourism opportunities, Jessica continued. Many of our citizens are eager to visit alien worlds. Anthropologists, mostly. They're very interested in studying primitive political structures and outdated intimidation techniques. Chancellor Vortak's frills had deflated completely. Ambassador, perhaps we should reconsider the original framework of these negotiations. Oh, I think we're past that point, Chancellor. You see, when you started this meeting by trying to intimidate me, you made this personal. And humans are notorious for taking things personally. Dave from the sandwich incident? He still checks alligator wrestling tournaments, hoping for a rematch. She sat back down, but somehow managed to make it look like she was claiming territory. Now I'm prepared to be reasonable here, in recognition of your obvious oversight in researching human psychology before attempting to threaten us. I'm willing to include a face-saving clause in our agreement. We can phrase this as a mutual partnership initiative instead of humanity gets everything they want, because aliens are economically dependent on coffee. Bleep Blob's tentacles perked up slightly. You would allow us to maintain dignity in the official records. Of course, we're not monsters. We understand that admitting you were completely wrong about everything might be politically difficult. Though between you and me, the footage of this meeting is probably going to be mandatory viewing at the Earth Diplomatic Academy for the next century. Chancellor Vortak made a sound that might have been a whimper. There's footage? Oh, Chancellor, you don't think I came here without recording everything, do you? This is going to be a masterclass in how not to negotiate with humans. I'm thinking of calling it Aliens Try to Intimidate a Species That Fought a War Over a Bucket. She stood up again, and this time all three aliens actually leaned back. But here's my final offer, gentlemen. We can either finalize this as a mutually beneficial partnership where everyone gets what they need, or we can escalate this to what humans call the nuclear option. General Krex perked up. Nuclear weapons? Oh, General, you're thinking too small. The nuclear option is when we tell the rest of the galaxy exactly how this meeting went, complete with video evidence of 3 supposedly advanced species trying to intimidate a human with theatrical lighting and ceremonial chains. The silence that followed was so complete that Jessica could hear the air recycling systems. Alternatively, she continued cheerfully, we can shake hands, sign a mutually beneficial trade agreement, and pretend this was all a civilized diplomatic process between equals. Your choice, gentlemen. 2 hours later, Jessica was reviewing the final documents with the satisfaction of someone who had just won a poker game with a pair of 2s. The Galactic Council members sat around the table looking like they'd been through a natural disaster, which, in a way, they had. I think this covers everything, she said, flipping through the agreement. Full Galactic Trade Consortium membership for humanity, access to all shipping lanes, preferential rates, cultural exchange programs, and a mutual defense pact that basically makes attacking human interests the same as attacking Council member interests. Chancellor Vortak nodded weakly. The terms are acceptable. Acceptable? Chancellor, these terms are Christmas morning and winning the lottery rolled into one. You've essentially given humanity everything we wanted plus things we didn't even know we wanted. She paused at one particular clause. I especially like the part about the coffee monopoly. Granting humanity exclusive rights to supply stimulant beverages to all council species was a stroke of genius. We thought it might help stabilize the supply chain, Bleep Blorp said, his tentacles finally relaxing for the first time in hours. Oh, it will. And the markup we'll be able to charge for premium blends is going to fund our expansion into 17 new sectors. Really, gentlemen, I can't thank you enough for being so cooperative. General Krex shifted uncomfortably. Ambassador, may I ask a question? Of course, General. Would humanity have actually escalated if we had refused these terms? Jessica considered this for a moment. General, 3 weeks ago, a human named Kevin started a war between 2 gaming clans because someone said his spaceship design looked stupid. The conflict lasted 6 days, involved 40,000 players across 8 countries. and ended with the complete restructuring of the game's political system. She closed the document folder with a satisfied snap. Kevin spent his vacation time on this war. He took days off work to command fleets in a video game, because someone insulted his creativity. So, to answer your question, yes, humanity would have escalated. We would have escalated so thoroughly and with such creative enthusiasm that future historians would have used it as a cautionary tale about the dangers of annoying humans. Chancellor Vortak's voice was barely above a whisper. What would you have done? Well, for starters, we would have probably introduced competitive coffee drinking to your species. Nothing brings down a civilization quite like a caffeine addiction paired with human-style competitive consumption. We would have taught your youth about the concept of pranking and viral challenges. Can you imagine? Galactic Council meetings interrupted by young aliens trying to recreate Earth TikTok videos. The three aliens looked at each other with expressions of profound horror. But that's all hypothetical now, Jessica continued cheerfully. Because you were smart enough to see reason. This partnership is going to be wonderful for everyone involved. Humanity gets to expand its markets, and you get to maintain the illusion that this was all your idea. She stood up and extended her hand. Gentlemen, it's been a pleasure doing business with you. They shook hands with the enthusiasm of people agreeing to a hostage exchange. Oh, one more thing, Jessica said as she gathered her materials. When you report this to your respective governments, you might want to emphasize the mutual benefits rather than dwelling on the specifics of how we got here. Just a suggestion. She paused at the door. And Chancellor? Next time you want to intimidate a species, maybe do a little research first. The dramatic lighting was a nice touch, but you should have gone with elevator music instead of the ominous orchestral piece. Nothing says we're taking ourselves too seriously quite like a full symphony playing menacing themes during a trade negotiation. As she walked out of the chamber, Jessica could hear the sounds of three alien officials having what sounded like a nervous breakdown. She pulled out her communicator. Director Martinez, Jessica. The negotiations went well. How well? Let's just say humanity just became the most important trading partner in the galaxy, and it only took me 4 hours. She paused, listening to the response. Escalate to what? Oh, you mean our backup plan? No, we didn't need to introduce them to the concept of human teenagers. Turns out the threat of coffee price manipulation was sufficient. Though I am putting together a proposal for next quarter's expansion into the Andromeda sector. I have some ideas about introducing alien species to the concept of competitive eating contests. As the chamber doors closed behind her, the sound of alien officials frantically trying to figure out what they'd just agreed to echoed through the halls. Jessica smiled. Just another day in the diplomatic corps. After all, if there was one thing humans excelled at, it was turning other species' expectations completely upside down. And if those species happened to be economically dependent on human coffee in the process, well, that was just good business.